Hello and welcome to our coverage of the World Economic Forum in Davos. I'm Markus Karlsson. Sometimes the conversation here in Davos is directed by events that happen far away from Switzerland and by issues that are not officially on the agenda. Britain's EU membership became one of those hot topics this week when Britain's Prime Minister David Cameron gave a speech in London pledging to hold a referendum on Britain's EU membership by 2017. What does this mean then for British and European business? Well, to talk about that, I'm joined here on our Davos balcony by Sir Roger Carr. He is the chairman of the energy company Centrica, and he's also the president of the CBI, which is the main business lobby in the UK. Welcome to the program and thank you for joining us.
Pleasure.
Now, you've said that David Cameron's stance on the European Union is causing uncertainty for the British economy, seeing that we may now have to wait until 2017 to have a definitive answer whether or not Britain is in or out. You must be pretty unhappy.
No, I mean, I think the British business response was actually quite positive. The tone and style of the Prime Minister's speech made it clear that we wanted as a country to have constructive engagement, that he, as the Prime Minister, wanted to be part of Europe and he would champion the cause. Yes, he wants to see change, just as all countries in Europe, I think, want to see change, to pursue competitiveness. And he believes that in the pursuit of that, at some stage, we should ask the British people to support and confirm our commitment to Europe. So I think what we have as a result of the speech is a very positive engagement, a constructive engagement, and we now have clarity and certainty on a process. What we don't have, of course, is certainty on the outcome. And I think in the intervening period, it's going to be up to British business, along with politicians, to keep making the case that Britain's future prospects are best served as part of Europe. And certainly British business will be doing that.
The British government, though, it says that it wants to renegotiate Britain's treaty with the European Union. The answer from places like Berlin and Paris, it's been nein and it's been non. What do you say to that?
I would say that the response we had from Angela Merkel was actually quite supportive. I think the point that the Prime Minister made was that being more competitive, being more flexible, is in everybody's interests in Europe. And I think we must seek alliances with our friends and partners in Europe to achieve that in everybody's interests. So this wasn't Britain standing against Europe. This was Britain encouraging Europe to be more competitive and getting some support from Europe in return, which I think was good.
Do you think then that the other European ministers and officials, will they respond? Will they get into bed with Britain, so to speak?
Well, they may not get into bed, but I think they may get in step with Britain, because I think what we're trying to pursue is something that will benefit everyone. And I think there is common ground in some areas of what changes are needed. We have to accept that the whole of Europe at the moment is going through change. That isn't going to go away. And each country, whether it's part of the Eurozone or just part of Greater Europe, will have its own agenda. I think what we've got to find is a way of blending those agendas, so what comes out of it is good for Europe in total and therefore good for us all individually.
Now, the French Foreign Minister, Roselyne Febvre, he says that France will roll out the red carpet to any business that may want to leave Britain because of the uncertainty when it comes to the EU membership. Do you think that we'll see an exodus of British companies to France or anywhere else in Europe for that matter?
Well, I think his response was a very fair response to the commentary that he'd received from Britain in response to his tax rate and our suggestion that good people might come to Britain from France. So I understand the response.
We're seeing a little bit of sniping between the British and the French, just as usual,
a
basically.
little bit of good humour between the two. I don't think we're going to see an exodus of British business or British businessmen. I think, there is understanding that whilst Europe isn't perfect for everyone, and it isn't, getting Europe in a competitive state is in everyone's interest, and we must all stay and fight for that. I mean, Europe has to be competitive in a global world. It is changing strongly, and we have to change with it.
Do you think that investors outside of Europe will think twice before they put their money into the UK from now on, or at least until 2017?
I think all investors want certainty. I think they recognise that at the moment there is almost no certainty anywhere in Europe. So this, I don't think, changes the fundamentals. What will be important is for those looking at Britain to see just how committed we are to constructive engagement, to making changes in a positive way, to building relationships and rapport, so that at the end of the process we can all look back and say that was a collective endeavour that was good for everybody, rather than one or two people simply negotiating for their own position. That, I think, will be the way we're viewed. And if that's seen as the positive approach of business, and indeed politicians, I think people will be reasonably confident of a good outcome. And there's no doubt staying in Europe is the good outcome.
Now, the United States has warned, that, or at least said, that it wants Britain to remain a part of the European Union. Do you think that the UK could lose out politically were it to leave?
I think there's absolutely no doubt that although Britain can survive on its own, as indeed all countries can, it is stronger as part of Europe. And I think for those countries that see us as, the English-speaking bridge into Europe, where we have flexible labour, we have a good commitment to business, where we have a great language connection as well as a perfect time zone, all of those things mean that those looking to invest in the country, whether it's car manufacturers or any other type of business, would rather see us in than out. So they will encourage us to stay. And I think as people who seek inward investment, which obviously we do, we're making the case that we want to stay and we want to make things better with us as part of the future.
In a survey in the Times newspaper, 40% of respondents said that they actually wanted to leave the European Union, and 37% said that they wanted to stay. And the rest of them, they're insecure at the moment. They're not so sure. What do you say about those figures?
I think there are extreme views on Europe in the British public. I think what it tells me is that we now have time to make the case to the public so that everyone understands the merit of staying in, that nothing is perfect for everyone, but if we can make it good for the whole, that's in everybody's interest. And that's why the case has to be made by the politicians, by the business community. Otherwise, the public will not see the purpose. We have a job to do, but it's one I think we can do.
Now, I want to turn to the general state of play for the British economy. Fresh figures show that the British economy contracted by 0.3% in the final quarter of 2012. That's feeding into fears of a triple-dip recession in the UK. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think the figures are, let me say, unsurprising. I don't think we should focus too much on a quarter's figures, and we all know that these figures have a habit of being revised in the weeks that follow because they're best estimates at this stage.
But it can't be a good sign, surely.
But I think what we have to do is see it in the context of what is reasonable expectation. I mean, we are part of a community, a broad community in Europe, where many countries are still going backwards in terms of growth. We at least are, I think, showing about stable performance.
But hobbling along the flat line, that's not enough, is it?
It's certainly not enough. But the ambition is that it should be better. But I think ambition has to be realistic. And realism looking forward, in the year that we look ahead, if we achieve 1% or thereabouts of real growth, that will demonstrate that we are starting on a medium-term recovery path which is solidly based. I think the mood of business is actually quite positive. I hope that that mood then translates into better statistics as we go forward in the course of the year. But we have some confidence that it's actually, the momentum is good.
Is austerity working out in Britain? There's been lots of talk in Britain itself whether or not the government needs to change its austerity policies and move on to Plan B, as the language has been. What is your thought on that?
I've been, and indeed I think most of British business has been clear from the start, we needed the strong financial foundations that the rigour and discipline that has been imposed has given us. And we've had the benefit of global support for that. We've had low interest rates and can continue to have them. We have a competitive currency. And those two elements, which are founded on the bedrock of financial rigour, I think have kept the economy at least ticking over and giving us the chance for growth that we needed. I think to move away from that, however difficult austerity may be, is actually to remove the strong ground on which recovery is being built. And the emphasis should be towards certainly more rapid execution of some government policies, infrastructure spending, for instance. It needs to be British business working even harder in building its exports. But it's that that will deliver growth. I think leaving financial rigour may be, in fact, the way in which growth is undermined. At the moment, it's underpinned.
So we don't need a plan 2.0 in Britain, but perhaps we need plan 1.1. Is that where you're saying we need to change a little bit?
No, we've said all the way through that if you have a strong plan, you should build on that. I think the way in which it's executed is the important thing. And we've said to the government on a number of occasions, the direction of travel is fine. The way in which they've cut corporation tax, indeed cut income tax, to encourage business, I think has been well received. There has been an attack on regulation, which has been positive, and there's been positive support for exporters. All of those things are the tools we needed to do the job. We want some of those executed more rapidly, particularly where infrastructure spending can create employment. I think when you look at our employment figures, they're actually much better than one would have hoped at this stage. And again, it's an indication that we're on a positive path rather than a negative one.
Right, thank you very much, Sir Roger Carr, for speaking to us here at France 24. And with that, we're going to wrap up the programme. Thanks for watching. You at home.